Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams both going to the New York Giants, and the Bengals finally tag T. Higgins. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to talk about this rumored deal for DK Metcalf to the Green Bay Packers, discuss Sam Darnold's free agency options, but we'll start with Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams with the New York Giants potentially, and a franchise tag finally coming for T. Higgins and the Bengals. Before we dive into all of it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Lauren, finally, the Cincinnati Bengals placed the tag on T. Higgins. They exhausted the entire 2-week window with Tuesday, March the 4th being the deadline. I guess this was the expectation all along, whether Cincinnati can get a long-term deal done with T. Higgins while also needing to do Trey Hendrickson and Jamar Chase. I don't know. I guess I'm skeptical, but quite frankly, this is just according to plan for what the Bengals should be doing.
It feels like back-to-back franchise tag uses doesn't feel like it should be the plan, but once you get to this point, I guess you got to
right. Yeah, if you went back in time, I don't think that you would be wanting it to go this way. But with where the Bengals are at right now, basically all they could do. If you're the Bengals, you're trying to get a long-term deal done here, right? You see it the same way I do, or would you be looking to maybe trade T. Higgins?
I think if the plan was to trade him, you'd go with the non-exclusive franchise tag, right? And like the Chiefs have done with now Trey Smith and then also L'Jarius Sneed the year before, that other teams could negotiate with him and you'd get first-round picks, or you can just trade him a little bit more easier. But I think the actual hard tag suggests you want to keep him around, and their decision to release Alex Kappa and save some salary cap space also suggests, hey, they're making room to try and absorb not only this contract, but like you mentioned, Trey Hendrickson and others.
Yeah, 100%. They saved $10 million by releasing offensive lineman Alex Kappa. That happened in the morning. That kind of prefaced this news in the afternoon on Monday that Higgins would officially get the tag. But yeah, all indications out of Cincinnati is that they want to get a long-term deal done with all of these guys, keep their core together. I think Hendrickson might be the odd man out in this scenario if they do have to get rid of one of them. But I think you got to keep Joe Burrow happy, and that means bringing back T. Higgins. And ultimately, obviously, getting Jamar Chase done. Chase is probably going to get the biggest deal in NFL history for anybody who's not a quarterback.
But it's tough because they fired their defensive coordinator, right? Because defense wasn't good enough. So if Hendrickson is the one you let go, that just makes the job that much more difficult for trying to move that side of the ball in the right direction. But at the same time, Hendrickson is the oldest of the group, and there's something to be said about the value of having quarterback and receivers all locked in together for the long term. That at the end of the day, that's more valuable in total. But you look at the construction of the team, and at some point they got to invest more in that defense. It's just maybe not right this second.
Well, they add a first-round pick from Myles Murphy. Now, Murphy had a up and down start so far. It's a good edge class in the draft, so maybe the Bengals can trade Trey Hendrickson, use that additional capital to load up on draft, to go with their previous first-round pick, and maybe that makes them feel comfortable about getting younger on defense and continuing to build. But you're right. They're a team that needs help on defense, and getting rid of it may not point them in the right direction, but you got to keep that offense together no matter what. And it seems like that's their plan. I do want to move to another potential trade with a wide receiver, and it's Davante Adams. From the New York Jets to the New York Giants, Aaron Rodgers wants his buddy to come along. The Giants have some interest in Aaron Rodgers, it appears. Honestly, even if they go with a rookie quarterback, I think this could be the right move if you're thinking about Brian Dable and Joe Shane trying to save their jobs. You could throw Aaron Rodgers out there with Malik Neighbors and Davante Adams. You have Andrew Thomas at left tackle. You have pieces on defense, especially at pass rushing on the D-line. I could see an Aaron Rodgers-led New York Giants team actually win some games. And if you combine that with trading up and getting a quarterback or just sticking and picking and get a quarterback. I think that would be a very aggressive attack at the quarterback position that could allow the Giants to maybe have their cake and eat it too, get wins and still get the future.
Well, that's the tricky part, right? It's like the Giants are desperate here to save their jobs. And so are they, how willing are they to kowtow to Aaron Rodgers' demands? Are they the right mix of a team? Because, I guess Davante Adams is a good player, but is that helping the Giants in the way that they need the most? Like if you're trading for someone like Adams, that's a huge chunk of your cap space at wide receiver, where you've got Malik Neighbors and you can bring back Darius Slayton and piece together a wide receiver core without Davante Adams. But if you're spending a bunch on him and a bunch on Rodgers, that doesn't leave much else to bolster the rest of this team to actually be a better football team. But if they're desperate enough for Rodgers to get all of Rodgers' guys in there, then maybe they could be the right fit there. But it doesn't feel like that's in the best interest of the team to do everything Rodgers wants. But if you get him for cheap, then it's a little bit of a different story.
Exactly. Now, the thought is that if nobody trades for Davante Adams, which is funny this year, it's like, oh, they're going to seek a trade, but if not, they're going to cut him. Well, any smart team would just say, oh, well, I'll just wait for you to cut him then, and I'll get him cheaper. I think that is a realistic avenue for the Giants to get Rodgers and Adams. I agree with you that a trade for Adams, his cost right now, it's like $36 million or something like that. That's absolutely a no-go for any team around the NFL. But Patricia Traina from Locked On Giants doesn't seem very interested in Aaron Rodgers from her perspective.
The Giants right now, they are exploring all options. But that being said, they have kind of stacked the options now that Matthew Stafford, which was their top option, by the way, Matthew Stafford obviously out of the picture. So the Giants have kind of stacked the options, if you will. And Aaron Rodgers, as I understand it, is not exactly high up on the list of options. He is on the list, but not high up on the list. He's more of an emergency, a contingency plan, if you will, if some of these other options don't play out. Now, it's interesting when the news came out about Rodgers potentially being interested in the Giants. A lot of, I think a lot of people were split. Some people are like, no, don't want him. Some people are like, yeah, go get him. Folks, my feeling on the situation is this. I would rather the Giants go in a different direction.
And that's fair, but what direction do they go? If they're not interested in Sam Darnold and he doesn't want to come back to New York anyway, which would be understandable, like, are they going to go get Justin Fields? Do you just hope and pray that Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr becomes available? Like, I don't see, if they don't want to do Aaron Rodgers, the only other option they have is to trade up in the draft. They have no other options. And even a trade up in the draft for a rookie, that's not a guarantee that you're going to win games and keep your job from Brian Daboll and Joe Shane's perspective. So I don't think they really have another option other than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, they have to do something as a veteran quarterback, right? Like, even if the plan is to trade up in the draft, like, you just never, like, free agency comes first, right? You can't necessarily go through free agency with the Giants roster having this huge hole at the quarterback spot, because then it signals to the Titans at 1 and the Browns at 2 and any other hey, we absolutely have to and need to get a quarterback. So they have to have some semblance of a believable plan of like, hey, we could go through the draft without landing a quarterback if we absolutely had to. And so I don't know what else you could really sell yourself on other than Aaron Rodgers as being a real plan there that everyone might believe, unless, like you said, Cousins or Carr or something like that becomes available. But as it stands right now, you got to do something more than what you've got. And there aren't very many other options not named Aaron Rodgers that actually could sell that type of a direction.
Yeah, other than Sam Darnold, which if they don't want him, then I kind of have a hard time seeing what the path is there. And speaking of Sam Darnold, if the Giants don't want him, who's his best fit? We're going to talk about Sam Darnold's free agency. He's probably the top name at the quarterback market. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off, you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or I'm picking a player to hit a clutch 3 I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the T. Higgins franchise tag, hit the Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams combo for the New York Giants. But now I want to switch gears. Free agency, well, the tampering period, which is just insanity to call it that. Let's just call it the legal negotiation period, whatever. Just say free agency is open. Legal tampering makes no sense, but old man yelling at a cloud, point over. The quarterback free agency market is very, very interesting, and Sam Darnold is at the top of that list. But coming out of the combine, there doesn't seem to be as much overwhelming love for Sam Darnold in free agency as maybe people thought during the season. Looking at the options out there, we talk about the Giants, the Raiders, maybe the Titans. What do you think is the best option for Sam Darnold going forward?
It's tough because there's different ways to measure the best option for Sam Darnold, right? I guess individually, is it about going to the best team for him, or is it about putting him in the best position to be successful? Is the goal getting the best long-term contract right now, or if teams aren't willing to give him a huge deal, if he just wants a 1-year kind of quick thing to get back out on his feet again next year and prove it again, then that might be a different conversation. But I think I look to someone like the Raiders as that spot where he's least likely to get supplanted by a rookie quarterback. If I feel like they're the team that's farthest from the top of the draft, that would take the most for them to trade up to the number 1 pick, where I can come there and I am the guy, that maybe they still draft somebody, but they're least likely to get Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, one of these high pressure top pick quarterbacks. Maybe they take somebody in the second round or trade down and take somebody in the first round, but it's not as clearly and obviously hey, who's going to be the starting quarterback this year in Las Vegas? It's more okay, they have a long-term and a short-term option there. I know they've got a lot of work to do on that roster around him, but from a stability standpoint, I think he can sort of settle into a longer-term future there.
Yeah, I think he would have, less looking over his shoulder as to, are they just trying to replace me? I think that makes a ton of sense, but it is interesting that your boy Q from Locked On Raiders, he doesn't sound too interested in Sam Darnold.
The Raiders, there's a couple reports coming out of the scouting combine that the Raiders have interest in Sam Darnold if the Vikings don't tag him, and it looks like that they won't. I know some people believe that they will, but it doesn't seem to me that they're going to tag him. And look, I'm not in on the Sam Darnold conversation, right? I understand he did it 1 year, it looked really good in Minnesota, but it was also 1 year in Minnesota. Really good head coach, really good wide receivers, really good offensive line, really good run game. The Raiders don't have all those elements in place, right? They have some elements, don't get me wrong. I don't trust the fact that he's only done it 1 year out of his whole career, been really good 1 year, and then when push came to shove, when it came to the games that they had to have, he really folded, wasn't able to get it. I mean, pressure came to him, and he looked like the old Sam Darnold that we remember when he was a member of the New York Jets. So I'm really out on Darnold.
Look, I got to be honest. The Titans are a team that makes a ton of sense for Sam Darnold. And as a matter of fact, on my show today, I'm going to basically line out that Titans fans need to get ready for Sam Darnold, because you start to look at the way things line up, and it makes too much sense. But I don't think it makes sense for Sam Darnold. And we heard rumors that the Colts might be interested in Sam Darnold. That makes way more sense for Sam Darnold than the Tennessee Titans or the New York Jets or the Giants or the Raiders. A team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, I cannot understand why the Steelers aren't interested here and why they'd rather go back to Justin Fields, who they benched and didn't put back in. And we can say, they promised Russell Wilson a starting job. But I'm sorry, Mike Tomlin just does not seem like the type of guy to me that would start a guy for political reasons over who would be the better player. They thought Russell Wilson gave them the best chance to win. So to immediately go back to Justin Fields, I just don't understand that either. So the teams that make the most sense to me, the Steelers and the Colts, are the teams, honestly, that if we lined them up, seem the least likely to go pay him.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm Darnold, like, find me good supporting cast infrastructure. Like, is Arthur Smith as the Steelers offensive coordinator the guy who's going to put me in the best position? Because I think I would hope Darnold has the self-awareness to recognize, like, okay, I wasn't that great early in my career. I was so much better when someone like Kevin O'Connell could make it easier for me and like be in that position. Like, I need some help, right? Okay, I've needed some help as a quarterback, and that's okay. So where can I go and get the kind of coaching and offensive system help to enable me that way? And I don't feel like Pittsburgh necessarily gives that to me. I don't feel like the New York Giants necessarily give that to me.
No.
I'm not sure whether Tennessee gives that to me or not. You know, I'm trying to be nice, you know, but like, so it starts to narrow it down. Like, maybe the Colts, or I think Chip Kelly in Las Vegas could do some interesting things.
Yeah.
Well, like there's teams where circumstances need to outweigh, you know, money or winning opportunity sometimes, just to be the best version of yourself to elongate his career. Because one great year does not mean Sam Darnold is now set for the rest of his NFL career at all.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If I had to throw in one crazy one, I'm just going to get crazy. Just get a little wild for a second.
49ers?
The Dolphins.
Ooh.
The Dolphins. If you want infrastructure, if you want a good play caller to know that you're going to be supported, yeah, they need some help on the offensive line. You know, Tyreek Hill is getting older. I get it, but Sam Darnold in Miami just makes sense. I know Tua's there. They would never do it. But if there was, you know, if they were worried about Tua's health, which I'm always worried about Tua's health, you know, maybe a team like New Orleans, you know what I mean? What if they cut Derek Carr to save $31 million on the cap, and they go out and get Sam Darnold and pair him with Kellen Moore? Like, I don't know, just thinking outside the box here as to some moves that these teams could make that maybe we don't expect, you know?
Yeah, money's going to be such a big factor in that for Darnold, where, again, is my motivation give me the biggest contract I can possibly get, or is my motivation go play for a team where I can be just as successful as I was in Minnesota? Because different teams can offer you different amounts of both of those.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. But with that being said, a lot of quarterback talk here. Quarterbacks and wide receivers today, because we got more wide receiver talk on the way. Our own Locked On hosts, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Packers, making waves at the Combine. A little deal between the Packers and the Seahawks for DK Metcalf may be on the way. All right, Lauren, so we got the big news at the end of last week. My guy Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers and my guy Corbin Smith from Locked On Seahawks going back and forth with some reports between these two teams. I'm going to let my guy Peter Bukowski break down all the news.
Reporting over the weekend, including from yours truly, that the Packers have at least called the Seattle Seahawks about DK Metcalf. This started with Corbin Smith, our pal over at Locked On Seahawks. He also has his own site, used to be at Seahawks for Sports Illustrated. And he reported that three teams, the Packers and the Patriots being two of them, and then a mystery third team, had called on DK Metcalf. He later added the Chiefs and the Bills calling on DK Metcalf. I happened to be in a position to confirm that part of the report. Now, that is one of two options, as I understand it, for the Green Bay Packers, or two main options. Davante Adams is another. We got the reporting now over the weekend that the Jets are open for business on that one. Come get Davante Adams, they're saying. Okay. So that is another option for the Packers, and I think allows them to go to the Seahawks and say, hey, look, if you're not willing to play on our terms and you want to bring down that asking price, which Corbin said was a first-round pick and a player, there is not a world. I'm sorry, there is not a world where the Packers do that deal.
And I agree. You simply can't do that deal. But I've said all season, I think I'm not the only person saying this, but I mean, heck, the Packers starting running back, Josh Jacobs, is saying this. They need a true dominant number one receiver. And when you look at what Christian Watson adds to that offense, that vertical element, big bodied guy, 6'4", 6'3", well, you get basically the best version that you can get of that in the NFL in DK Metcalf with his size and his speed and his threat ability downfield. So I think that would be like the perfect addition to the Green Bay wide receiver core. Compensation be damned. The fit is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and this feels like a team that's primed for a move like this, right? They've got so many of these guys on rookie contracts that are younger, ascending players. So there's a lot of affordable costs across the roster. Obviously, Jordan Love's already got his big contract, but it's not as though they have a bunch of big deals handed out to a bunch of players. They've got some wiggle room here to trade for DK Metcalf and give him that big contract, especially thinking about him as a, 27, 28-year-old wide receiver at this point compared to someone like Davante Adams. Like, this is someone that you would feel a lot more comfortable investing big money into and certainly long-term into, so that he and Jordan Love can build up that rapport with long-term, as opposed to maybe more of a short-term 1 to 2 year thing with Adams, where maybe it could be great for a little while, but maybe by the time they finally get locked in that perfect chemistry, Adams is even older and not as good anymore. And then you kind of got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And listen, I know that nostalgia is a very potent drug, no doubt about it. And the Davante Adams to Green Bay stuff sounds good, but I'm with you there. Like, he's just an older player that doesn't make sense for where Green Bay is at right now. I think, like we saw with the Eagles when they make the trade for A.J. Brown, and DK Metcalf is obviously a few years older now than A.J. Brown was then because they're around the same age, same draft class. But, like, I would want to go with a guy that can build with Jordan Love for a few years, and we can continue gaining chemistry and can be there. And you probably have 2 or 3 more good years of DK Metcalf. So I'm with you there. Adams is a guy who, by the time they reach the pinnacle of their relationship, you're right, it may be just a little too late. So you get a guy with DK Metcalf and you kind of avoid that problem.
Yeah, I just don't understand why the Seahawks would be in this position right now for someone this young and this, this bona fide. Like, there hasn't been this big public outcry per se. And we've kind of seen back and forth reporting that every year Seahawks are going to trade DK Metcalf and who's going to come get him. And then they never do. And it's like, why are we still, fighting over this in these trade discussions here? Like, it makes a ton of sense for Green Bay, just like someone like T. Higgins would too. But it doesn't seem to make sense for these teams getting rid of young ascending wide receivers. Like, just pay them. They're good players.
Well, I agree with you there. I think there's one other way to look at this, though, where Geno Smith is going to be 34 years old this year. And if they realize in the building that this version of the team is already maxed out and we need to kind of work to transition away from that, maybe this is the last year of Geno Smith, and then we look to attack quarterback in a different way, you could make the argument that having DK Metcalf around, whoever you go with at quarterback, it would help them, and I agree there. But he's very expensive. If he wants another payday here soon, DK Metcalf is a guy who I personally, just watching his film and watching the way he interacts with his teammates, and anytime the Titans have played the Seahawks and I've watched the tape, I've been like, I never want DK Metcalf on my team no matter what, ever. Don't care what the cost is. That's a crappy teammate. Don't want him. I know that there are examples to say that that's not true, but I see what I see, and you can't make me not see it. I think that looking at Jackson Smith and Jigba and saying, that's our wide receiver one. That's the wide receiver that we're going to build our wide receiver core around. That's our long-term future at the position. We know that we're going to have to transition away from this group into a new group soon, and we don't want to give new money to DK Metcalf to have him on the team until he's in his 30s. Let's just go ahead and do it now. Get more draft capital to speed up that transition to the next version of the Seattle Seahawks. I think whether you agree with that or not, whether that's right or wrong or whatever, that could be the Seattle Seahawks point of view on making this move.
It's always frustrating, I'm sure, for fan bases to see, homegrown, developed talent that's good leave. You're sitting at your TV screaming this player is clearly very talented. Can't we find a way to make this work? It's different if he's 31 and Tyler Lockett's on his way out, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But man, I would think if I were a Seahawks fan and my team was bringing in a young quarterback, I would love for that young quarterback to have Jackson Smith-Njigba and DK Metcalf, as opposed to JSN and whatever they try and replace Metcalf with. Okay, they're going to get one of the young Packers receivers in return with a pick maybe, but Romeo Doubs doesn't quite do it for me in the same way.
Fair. And there's reporting out there that, Seattle is not interested in doing this, and they're not looking to trade DK Metcalf. So my favorite thing about pro sports is typically we get an answer. Are they? Will they? Would they? We'll probably find out at some point in time this offseason. So something to keep an eye on there. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. For me, your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, my co-host, Lauren Cox. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay safe out there.